Welcome to Mac Power Users. I'm David Sparks. Steve isn't here this week as it's St. Jude week, and Stephen is very busy with the St. Jude fundraiser and podcastathon. So every year when we have this week, I try to find a special guest for the audience that I think is someone who'd be really fun for me to talk to and someone to share with you. This year I was super happy when Sal Soghoian agreed to come on. Sal, welcome back to the Mac Power Users.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. I love your podcast. And I'm always glad to talk about automation and how it affects the world.
Yeah, well, it is, it is something that is very much evolving right now. We've got a deep outline with lots of interesting ways to go at automation. I think the ground rules have changed to a bit. But before I get into that, I just wanted to take a minute to talk about St. Jude. As this show gets published, it'll be right after the podcastathon, but it's still September, gang. There's still time to raise money for Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. Relay has now raised over $4 million. I don't know what that number will be when the show publishes, but man, I would love it if you were part of it. Gang, when I was at the Relay event in London last year, the St. Jude people sought me out. And they said, David, we want to talk to you because the Mac Power Users audience is one of the largest contributors to this every year. We love the MPU audience, and I do too, because I understand the Mac Power Users audience. You know, there's people that want to help folks out. Every dollar you give to St. Jude is helping people out with childhood cancer awareness. They just continue to move the bar with research and treatment. If your kid gets cancer, you go to St. Jude, they take care of them. They don't send you a bill. I don't know what else to say but that. Daisy and I save money every month for this every year. We just did our big contribution. And because of her work matches, we were able to double our contribution this year. You should check into that if you can. But I'll say it again. If everybody listening to this show just gave $5, it would make a huge difference for a lot of families. So give it some thought, gang. You don't have to make a huge contribution. Just make it, $5, $10. It can make a difference. We'll put a link in the notes. We'll put a link in the show notes, but you can go to stjude.org/relay right now and make a difference. So please do so. Sal, I'm sure not everybody knows about your legendary tenure at Apple, but you were there from, tell me if I'm right, 1997 to 2016?
Yeah, that's right. I was there for quite a while.
Yeah, I used to call you the grand poobah of automation, but you've corrected me so many times, I literally wrote it down in a note. You were the product manager of automation technologies.
Yes, product manager automation technologies at Apple. So that official title probably morphed a couple times during the way, but that's what it ended up being.
Yeah. And, you were there a long time. You dealt with Steve a lot as he was helping push automation as a way to help sell Macs.
Yep.
One person told me, I've never told you this before, but one time after you were on the show, an Apple person contacted me and said, the thing that about Sal that he'll never say is that when Steve came back and the company was in jeopardy, it was your automations in the publishing industry that kept them afloat. I'm not going to put you on a spot and say if that's true or not, but I feel like I've heard that from more than one Apple employee now. So you have had a lot to do with the success of a certain fruit company.
Steve realized that a lot of our important customers were heavily relying on automation, especially at that time. The publishing and media industries were highly involved in that. And Steve, being in multiple platforms himself, recognized that. He would soon became understanding about automation and really realized its role and its importance at Apple. And he was a valuable ally during the time he was there.
And getting to know you over the years, I know it wasn't just you. There were a lot of really smart people invested in automation at Apple, but you were at least part of the team that, helped out with Apple Script and Auto the Automator, and a lot of the kind of democratization of automation really came through the efforts of you and like-minded folks in Apple. And I always want to thank you every time we talk about that.
Apple Script and automation have an incredible history of where brilliant people step up at the right time and do the right things. And it's not just once or twice, it's consistently throughout its entire history that there were very many talented people, like Chris Espinosa and Chris Nebel and and all of the team that stepped up and took that technology forward at key points. Like when Tim Bumgarner came on and we got interfaces and tied into Project Builder and Interface Builder. There's
Yeah.
always been people doing that. And my job was the rabble rouser and activist internally and representative of automation inside the company and convincer and cajoler, all those kind of words. That was me.
Yeah. So you were running around to the team saying, "Hey guys, how come we don't have automation triggers in your app?" Stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I was good at making political deals. Let's put it that way. You never want to know how the sausage gets made, right? But it was very much a political thing of moving laterally inside the company between different organizations and groups and making friendships with key people like in iTunes and in retail and
Yeah.
all about the company and using those long-term relationships to build trust so that when we approached them about something, they knew that it was important.
Yeah, and it would be done right. And
Yeah, exactly.
and this is totally in left field, but Steven's not here, so we're going to go there. You told me once about your voicemail at Apple, and I have shared that story with friends, not people who even know who you are or know what I do, but I say, "Oh, I had this friend once," and would you just tell shortly how you handled voicemail at Apple? I just love this story.
Uh, it's it was quite unique. I never answered a voicemail while I was at Apple for 20. And I had been there for quite a while, and I got a call from somebody, in facilities or whoever managed that particular aspect. And they were an executive level
Yeah.
con me, and they said, Sal, you never accessed your voicemail. And you have to turn this on. People have to be able to contact you. And I said, well, do you want me to do my job or do you want me to answer voicemail? And I, in a nicer way, I think, than
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
that way. But I eventually convinced them. They said, okay, you don't have voicemail. I said, it's crucially important that I don't want people to think that they contacted me
Yeah.
and got something to me. They need to do it. And so the people that I had relationships with horizontally, like I described, knew to contact our AA or some other people. And like, for example, the people at the Executive Briefing Center knew that if they wanted to get me to do a briefing, they would tape a Baby Ruth bar to my door. And I would come back and I'd see the Baby Ruth bar and I would call down and go, okay, what do you need me for? Right.
Yeah.
That was how I did briefings there.
I respect that. Back in the days I was a lawyer, I had a rule where I only checked email in the morning and the evening. And I had judges call me and say, "Hey, I emailed you. How come you didn't reply?" I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I got work to do. I mean, if you email me, I will check it at 4 p.m. And if it's more important,
Right.
pick up the phone. And it's like, but I feel like a lot of people in the world have negotiated this interruption atmosphere that we have in
Right.
ways like this. And it's actually unrelated, Mac Powers. I have another podcast called Focus where we talk about this stuff all the time. But
Right.
I just love that story that you went like 20 years without checking your email. I think that's a record, right?
I actually, yes, I don't believe that ever happened again. And I actually didn't spend much time in my office. I
Sure.
was more often on site. Like I'd go down and hang out with retail for a month, or
Yeah.
I'd go over to iTunes and I would go on the road with them doing things, or I'd be over in engineering at certain times during the yearly cycle. And it was maintaining those relationships that gave me any kind of power that I was able to exert was from personal relationships that took time. And I couldn't sit in my office and just do things. I had to be out and about making those contacts.
Do you think there was ever like a meeting where someone said, "Do you think we should add automation to numbers?" And the other guy said, "Do you think Sal will leave if we don't?"
Well, usually, hopefully, I was proactive, especially with the iWork team. I used
Yeah.
to fly to Pittsburgh on a
Yeah.
regular basis just to, get my face there and have them realize that automation was something that was important and needed tending and needing care.
I've actually had interactions with the Pittsburgh iWork team at some of the Apple events, and they seem like some of the most plugged in folks for their apps. I mean, I think iWork, people don't realize iWork has its own team. It's out in
Mm-hmm.
Pittsburgh, and these guys are
Mm-hmm.
100% dedicated to making it better.
Absolutely. And they had to deal with a lot of politics too, because
Yeah,
anytime anything happened in the OSs, iWork was expected to be there right at the
day
beginning,
one. Yeah.
right? And so they were constantly getting pressure from outside that would interrupt their plans, on what they wanted to do next and what kind of allocations. So they had to deal with political issues a lot, and they managed to walk that line quite a bit and still maintained a certain level of autonomy and brilliance on their own.
I was at a lunch in Cupertino in the old days at a WWC, and I met a bunch of those guys for lunch.
Hmm.
And during it, I said, if I ever meet the guy who made Magic Move, I owe him a beer. And the guy, literally the guy sitting next to me, raised his hand and said, "Okay,
That was
buddy."
me. Yeah, right. Uh-huh.
All right. Well, enough reminiscing. These days, you are no longer with Apple, but you're still in the automation game. You've got a projects role at the Omni Group. You're doing a lot for them. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Omni.
Omni was a group that I always admire. The quality of their work and their commitment to their customers was always something that I admired while I was at Apple. And I had dealings with them. Apple used their software. For example, we had an AppleScript interface that connected with our bug tracking system called Radar that also tied into OmniPlan.
Yeah.
And so you could move things back and forth. And it was a custom tool. And, Greg came down and sat there in the room and worked on stuff with us as the needs came up. And we managed to build things that were really productive. And we could always count on Omni having a robust automation architecture.
Yeah.
And I just like those guys anyway. I mean, Ken Case and the team, just fantastic people, and Tim. And so, once I left Apple, working with them was like, wow, sure, I'd love to do that. And
Yeah.
they asked me, can you come on as like our automation advocate and advise us as to which directions we should be going in? What kind of features should we be doing? And I soon just kind of fit right in with everybody. And they're a marvelous group of people. And I really do enjoy working with them.
Yeah, to me as an outsider, it kind of felt like we got Sal unleashed at that point because, Apple's a big company and things
Mm-hmm.
move slowly. And there were things you were working on that would take years to see fruition if they ever did. Whereas
Absolutely.
at the Omni Group, you just added AI to the OmniFocus. I mean, we'll talk about that later, but I mean, you guys are moving very fast there, and
Yeah.
there's some real cool automation stuff coming out of the Omni Group.
Through Omni Automation, that's what we call our automation platform.
Yeah,
As you know, it's device independent. The same script that's JavaScript based on core JavaScript in the OS, so it's super optimized. It's the JavaScript Safari uses,
yeah.
and it works on any one of the Apple devices. So you write these tools. The plugin systems are just single file, very light. Through these guys, we've been able to create a really nice solution for automation customers.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan. But I want to wind back a little bit. We talked earlier about Apple Script, and
Mhm.
I have seen a little bit of a renaissance with Apple Script from our listeners. And when you dig down deep, it is often because of artificial intelligence. People
Ah,
who have limited skills with AppleScript. AppleScript is a bit of an oddball language. It's more human facing, which gets frustrating
mhm,
for programmers, but it's not quite human facing enough for non-programmers. So,
mhm.
so there's a friction point there. But I'm hearing from so many listeners that are discovering AppleScript now who've never used it before, but they've got 2 or 3 apps that have AppleScript support,
Yeah.
and they'll go to their favorite frontier model and say, "Write me an AppleScript that does this." And
Ah,
not always does it work the first time, but people are kind of like poking their way around it and
Yep.
getting to things that work. But I feel like this is a thing that power users are starting to adopt, like getting programming skills and automation languages that they didn't have otherwise.
Right.
Have you seen that, and what do you think of it?
Yes, absolutely. I think what they're attracted to is the Apple event architecture that AppleScript
Sure.
sits on.
Yeah.
The fact that there's a way to communicate between the various applications, which might be a database, it might be an intelligence architecture that can send an Apple event, this invisible communication, over to an app, ask it a question, get a response, all back simultaneously through this wonderful architecture that's really, incredible way to communicate. And I think that's what's attracted to them is that they can create interfaces into other applications through this Apple event, Apple script architecture.
Sure.
And it was always my my desire that Apple events be on every platform, but there was real challenges politically, and once the code base was down it was harder, and there wasn't the communication and willingness of other teams to see that vision. I wanted Apple events on everything, and unfortunately that didn't happen. So that's why on the Mac side, at least right now, you're seeing this kind of, you called it a new revolution, or
Renaissance, sort of. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, where you have MCP interfaces that are based on Apple events into something, and then you connect it to something like Claude,
Yeah.
and you can have it do all these different miracle things. It's really the architecture, I think, that is the sparkling entity at this moment on that kind of thing. And it's something that Apple needs to address over time, I believe.
Yeah,
Is
boy, if I had a time machine, I could go back and just beg them to put Apple events into the iPhone operating system, the original one.
Yeah,
If they had got it there, we would have got
we
it with
tried.
iPad,
Yes,
and yeah.
right.
Yeah, I know you fought the battle, but boy, because just think about what we could have now with MCP and AI with Apple
Oh yeah,
events on mobile devices.
right.
It's it's sad. As somebody who loves automation, it's like an opportunity missed. And I know that we've got JavaScript and ways to get around it, but
Yeah,
but for folks who are Mac power users, which is the name of our show,
right.
AppleScript is still very much a useful tool, and perhaps
Tremendous.
more so than ever because
Mhm.
of the ability of non-programmers to kind of pull something together. And I think you're really, in the old days, you could do that yourself if you went to the right forum, if you talked to somebody, if you looked at sample code. All
Yeah,
AI is really doing is scrubbing all that and trying to assemble it for you.
it was a pseudo natural language type thing. That was the approach.
Yeah,
They could write something that was like English. Tell application finder to duplicate every document file of the entire contents of folder documents to the drive name backup.
yeah,
You could actually write something like that and it would work. And that was the goal, was this whole natural language, but it didn't quite work because every time you hit a dictionary, the owner of that dictionary, which would be the application developer, if they didn't have that same ethic about making it readable and speakable, then you would get these weird things that were like intercap camel case things that block that whole wonderful natural language approach.
yeah. And frankly, for me, that's where AI has been the most helpful with
Mhm.
AppleScript is surfacing dictionaries
Yes.
because a lot of apps have oddball dictionaries, and you need to know, well, how is it that I call this function in this app? And
Hmm.
a lot of them have done a poor job of documenting it because it's such a
Yep.
niche feature. And
Yep.
AI is actually pretty good at finding that for you and giving you what you
Right.
need to go to the next step. But we've got folks doing this who have no experience with AppleScript, and now they're writing them with this. And that gives me a little pause because you're running code that you don't really understand on your computer.
Exactly.
Do you have any advice for people who are like trying to use AI generated Apple scripts? What are some ways to protect themselves, and what should they be looking out for?
That's a really great question, and one that should definitely be asked. Uh, the main thing to look for is try to find forums or communities, like you said. A community is your most valuable asset
Yeah.
because there's people there that want to work together, that like sharing, that recognize the importance of sharing information, who have already curated a lot of things. And a lot of times, the tasks that you're looking to do, somebody else has already done too. So find those types of communities that you work with, that you feel comfortable with, and help use the community to help you solve those type of problems. Don't necessarily rely on a piece of AI that might have scanned somebody's web page once, and tries to figure this out and write something that's not correct. Also, you can scan, since AppleScript is English like, or understandable, look for things like delete.
Yeah.
If the word shows up, make sure that no, what is that doing, and pretty much that would help a lot too. And look, one of the most popular powerful commands in Apple script was something that we put in, which was called do shell script,
Yeah.
where Apple script would actually drop into the shell and execute whatever shell command. So look for do shell script and just scan it. Just do a
Yeah.
search.
There be dragons
The
there.
Apple script
Yeah.
is doing anything with the shell. And if it is, then that could be cause for concern. It could be totally legitimate, but just look at it and say, well, okay, what's it doing down there?
Yeah.
Right.
I would add further, just make sure you understand what it's doing. If you don't,
Yes,
go to a forum, talk to somebody before you run a random shell script on your
yeah,
computer.
absolutely.
Have you done any of that stuff? I guess you probably don't use AI to help generate Apple script. You probably write it in your sleep.
Uh, yeah, pretty much. It's like I just look at my left arm where I've tattooed all my Apple script examples,
Yeah.
and I try. There's a couple basic things that once you've done them so many times, they just become ingrained, And but occasionally I'll try actually open up a dictionary and have to figure it out
Yeah.
and figure out what are the little quirks about this one, and it's trial and error. And once you okay with that, of just trying something for a little while, and you can figure it out.
It's like the old Mark Twain quote, rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated. I feel like we've heard 6 or 7 times that Apple
Oh
script is on
yeah,
its last legs. And
no,
I feel like this
no,
AI LLM thing has actually given Apple script yet another
absolutely,
life. And, um,
absolutely.
limited to working on a Mac. Sadly, like we talked about, Apple events don't go over to mobile, but a lot of us do our most important work on our Mac, and you should not ignore it.
Oh yeah.
The other question, tell me if I'm right here. People ask me all the time, like, why should I learn AppleScript? I feel like Apple's just going to yank it out someday. And this is my theory. My theory is that to take it out would take so much work
Uh-huh.
that they would never bother. I mean,
Exactly.
Apple scripts are at the root level of Mac OS. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see that they will ever. I mean, even if they wanted to actively remove it, somebody would give them a number and say, "Well, this is going to cost X dollars,"
It
and
would
they'd
be
say,
too dangerous.
"Yeah,
Definitely too
yeah,
dangerous to try to take it out because you don't know how many things are dependent. And within the company itself,
yeah,
people don't realize how much Apple actually automate their own processes,
yeah, yeah,
not only in manufacturing of hardware, but also in software. There was all kinds. The one of the number one automated groups at Apple was finance. I
okay,
used to go
yeah."
and
Don't mess
visit
with those
the finance
guys. Yeah,
team all the time,
yeah,
and they would run incredible automations on product SKUs and projections and all kinds of things that basically you watch these computers just run on their own, screen after screen,
yeah,
just all automated. And you don't, a lot of systems stay in place for quite a number of years, and you can't afford to automate it. Just for example, you talked about iWork. Well, I know that iWork uses automation to translate their documents between different languages.
yeah,
Anytime they create an iWork document that hits the public, there's 15 or 16 versions of that thing.
yeah,
Well, it's an automated process that they use behind the scenes that does that. They grabs the text out, runs it through their translator, pushes it back in, recreates the document, all those kind of things. It's all automated. And why risk that why put any of those processes at risk? Because then you'd have to spend a lot of money trying to go fix things or find alternatives, if there are any, for those particular processes. So I think AppleScript's going to be around until they turn out the lights, right? It's
Yeah.
a very useful thing. And basically like your wish and my wish, until they figure out a universal strategy for incremental automation, which a scripting language is.
Yeah.
Have component automation that is like automator shortcuts, right?
Yeah.
That's where you have these pre-done modules that you connect and you pass data and everything. But then when you want the granularity, you switch into some kind of system that gives you the granularity in the application to do what you want. And that's got to be like a scripting language. You can't make a component that handles everything, because then you're basically rebuilding your application interface. And right.
Yeah. So Mac Power users out there, if you've been sitting on the fence with AppleScript, now might be a great time to start experimenting because there's a lot you can do with it. This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by Squarespace. Save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain using the code MPU. Just go to squarespace.com/MPU. Squarespace is the all-in-one website platform designed to help you stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just starting out or scaling your business, Squarespace gives you everything you need to claim your domain, showcase your offerings with a professional website, grow your brand, and get paid all in one place. I've been a Squarespace customer since they first started. I still have an active site. And what I really like about them is the way they continually to evolve the platform, to update it for the latest technologies while still keeping it easy to use and affordable. With a Squarespace website, you can get discovered fast with their integrated SEO tools. Nobody wants to build a beautiful website only for nobody to see it. That's why every Squarespace website is optimized to be indexed with meta descriptions, an auto-generated sitemap, and more, so more people find your site through search results. And you can make smarter decisions with their analytics. Keep track of the stats that matter with intuitive built-in analytic tools. It makes it super easy for you to review website traffic, learn where to focus engagement, and track revenue, bookings, invoices, or product sales. Gang, I've been doing stuff on the internet for a long time, and it used to be so hard, and now it's just so easy. Just go to squarespace.com/MPU, sign up, and you're good to go. If you go there, you can get a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, use the offer code MPU to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. That's squarespace.com/MPU. Offer code MPU to get 10% off your first purchase and to show your support for the Mac Power users. And our thanks to Squarespace for their support of the Mac Power users and Olive Relay. All right, Sal, we're a few years into shortcuts now, which is kind of the next thing. In a lot of ways, it's a spiritual successor of your friend Otto the Automator.
Yeah.
And I thought it'd be, since I had you here, where do you see its successes and failures? How's Shortcuts doing?
Oh, I'm so proud of what they're accomplishing and what the original workflows team did with that, and how it's been carried on. It's very impressive, the work that they're doing, because I understand how difficult it is to keep moving forward in the pace you want to, because they interact with so many other aspects of the operating system that if you thought, oh, I'm just going to make a change here, you have to check and see how that affects all
Yeah,
kinds of things. So it's a difficult path to find your way forward, but they're doing it incrementally. They're moving that architecture forward, and I think they'll eventually get to a really, really interesting, powerful state once that next thing connects. About the Apple talked about how Siri will connect into the
yeah,
intense architecture, right? And once you get that in there, then that's going to be a momentum driver for people to adopt even more and to rewrite their stuff to make it correct and proper, because the what it's going to be able to deliver is going to be so compelling that you'll want to be part of that game.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And now,
Yeah.
for the listeners who aren't up on it, talk about the intense architecture of it. Explain what that is.
the way that AppleScript works and the way that scripting languages work is they expose the innards of the application. In any application, they're all have similar things. They have elements to them. For example, you might have a text box or you might have a shape or something like that. That's an element, and every element has properties that define it. Like the shape might have a dimension, it might have a fill color or a stroke, and all of those are properties to that shape. And what the scripting architecture does is it exposes those little hooks and properties to outside applications to be able to call through the scripting language, right?
Yeah.
And app intents kind of exposes those kind of things as well to a different architecture, to the architecture that shortcuts is based upon. Instead of being an Apple event architecture where it was connecting to an Apple script, they have this thing called app intents, where you're basically exposing functionality or access to these elements through this architecture. And the folks on that team came up with this concept of app intents, that applications could publish all of these hooks like a script. It would be the equivalent of a scripting dictionary.
Yeah.
And some level of intelligence could figure out, based upon your request, which one of those app intents to pull, which one of those little levers to pull, which data to pass between them and everything. When I was at Apple, when Tom Gruber and the Siri team came on, Tom introduced me to Philippe Pirneau,
Yeah.
who was the guy that developed their prototyping engine, and was just a brilliant man. And I worked with them for years. And we actually had Siri connected to Apple events and AppleScript and JavaScript for automation. And you could sit there in natural language, and there was like 84 different ways to say create a document, and it would understand it. And we had it connected to libraries, script libraries, dozens and dozens of script libraries. We had like 600 commands where you could just talk to Siri and build entire presentations or all kinds of different things. But it relied on these libraries of pre-done routines.
Yeah.
What this does, and the brilliance behind what they're doing, is they're actually building these hooks, these app intents, into the structure of the application so that the developer themselves puts them in, maintains them, and exposes the functionality. And now they finally have the computers at the level where you can have this intelligence that threads the needle between all of those.
For example, if you write an app and there is a function in it to print a PDF of the receipt,
Mm-hmm.
the developer with not much work can turn that into an app intent.
Yes,
And then the user can say, well, I want to print a PDF as a receipt. And you don't know the dictionary. You don't know how any of this stuff works.
exactly.
But the app intents library unearths it for you.
Right,
And then you've got it available. And right now it's available as a shortcut action. But
right,
Apple has said, and I believe they're going to, I know they're slow to the game here, but they're going to get Siri fixed. And it is going to have enough AI smarts to also surface those intents.
right,
And like you were saying earlier, once that happens, then anybody who's making an app that wants you to be able to talk to your phone and call an action, they need an app intent. So it's like the raising tide raises all boats?
oh,
Yeah. And so suddenly shortcuts is going to get way better. Siri
oh
is going to
yeah.
get way better.
And let me see how I have to say this. There's this preconception that somehow Apple's missed this Siri boat. I don't believe that that's necessarily the case here. I think that what they're doing and the approach that they're eventually going to get to is really compelling, and it takes a lot of processes to get to that level.
Yeah.
Now, you can have your app intents, but then to figure out, based upon what this user is saying, how do I thread those to connect them together to be able to do what I want? In our prototype that I had worked with Philippe and everybody before, we pre-thought the scenarios out and stored them as libraries. In this scenario, the new scenario, you have this artificial level of intelligence that can replace that pre-done thought
Yeah.
with the ability to thread these things together and stitch them together live. And that takes multiple levels of work in order to make happen. And I think that they're probably on track. And I'll bet you there's things that they could show us that would just be stunning. So I'm hopeful about how this is going to turn out, and that once it gets there, everybody's going to forget any kind of misgivings that they had, because it's just going to be so much fun. If it's anything close to what we had as a prototype, it's going to be so much fun to use the computer. It's just a joy.
Yeah, I have faith they're going to sort it out too. And one of the primary reasons for that is the existence of app intents already. This is not a new technology that needs to be
Right.
created. Developers are writing app intents today into their apps. So as soon as this is there, it's going to be very useful out of the gate.
Uh-huh.
Although I will say my frustration with Siri is it wasn't that good for a long time, and
Right.
they sat on it. I mean, if they had started improving it 5 years ago, I feel like we would have already been there. But they'll get, like you said, they'll get there, and everything that we're seeing from the outside makes it appear that they realize how important it is now, and they're
Yep.
spending the money and the resources to get it right. So
Yep.
I'm looking forward to that. So tell us a little bit. Now, we talked about Omni earlier, but you just did something kind of remarkable with OmniFocus. And I think you're one of the first developers I've heard of doing that, incorporating Apple's onboard Apple Intelligence into the application. I know you played a key role in that. I know there were a lot of other people at Omni working on it as well, but talk about what you guys did and how it works.
So recently, Apple made a decision to expose the foundation models framework. That's a lot of things to say, right?
Yeah,
Apple Foundation Models Framework. I'm going to call it occasionally AFM, if that's okay,
yeah,
instead of trying to spit that out all the time. They made a decision to expose that to developers so that you could incorporate that onboard Apple intelligence in with your app to have it do things for you. Well, at Omni, one of our main things is that we like providing the functionality of the app to our motivated customers through automation. So it made a lot of sense for, well, why don't we just expose the same thing through Omni Automation and let our customers decide how they want to use this? We can write some examples and show them how to do it and see what they do with that. So recently, beginning with OmniFocus 4.8, which just came out, where turn this on so that in Omni Automation, you can write like 2 or 3 lines of JavaScript and it will send a query into the AFM, and you can get back the response in either of two formats, either a text that's like conversant and, you know, language model text, or you can get it back as JSON data. And in order to get it back as JSON data, you create what is called the schema, which is just a short little bit of JSON that shows it how you want the data responded. Like I wanted a list. For example, if I say, give me the names of the planets in the solar system, I want them back as a JavaScript list of strings. And you give this like little bit of JSON and you pass that in with your prompt and you get back exactly the data that you want. So you don't have to parse anything, right? So the clever guys at Omni put this all in and made it totally transparent so that you don't have to write any of that. You just write the prompt in the JSON and the one line of JavaScript, and it's talking to the onboard intelligence. And darn if it isn't really interesting what you're able to do. For example, one of the things we had right away is if you're in an app that does planning like OmniFocus and you're trying to think about, I got this thing I need to do, what would be the steps I need to come up with? And you just need some rough framework to get going, right? Well, you can ask it. You can say, what are the steps for adding solar power to my house? And bam, it comes up with this multi level thing instantly. Now, that might not be the what you actually use, but it's got your
Starting
basic
point. Yeah.
outline points and starting points. Another one was, I got some text on the clipboard that has events in it, parties and meetings and things like that. And I tell the intelligence, scan my clipboard, grab all the events out of there, and make them tasks in my inbox in OmniFocus. And bam, it does it instantly. So, as you've often said, the grunt work
Yeah.
kind of things are really approachable now using this level of intelligence. I don't need to have it say, what do I need to do with my life? What I
Yeah.
need to have it do is, I know what I want to do the grunt work for me and lay out the basic outline. And it's happening. It's available.
Yeah, and it's out now. So if you're an OmniFocus user, the current public shipping version has this in it. So a couple things I want to say about that, because I've been kind of publicly against AI task management and calendar management, because I feel
Mhm.
like as adults we need to figure out what we're going to do this day and what we're not going to do, and if we're not making
Right.
those decisions, we're in trouble. We need to we need to be the ones that decide not to answer the voicemail. But this is, I call it donkey work. I don't know where I came up with that, but there is like donkey work to this stuff, and like giving me a rough list of ideas to put solar in is a great idea. It's a good initial almost like a brainstorming tool.
Huh?
As soon as this went out, because you guys made it open, one of the users developed an application that suggests tags for your task. It looks at your tag library. It looks at what the description is as, well, I think this is probably a tag on your solar project or a tag on the telephone or whatever it is. And it's like, so people are already doing this. Now, just to be clear, this is using the onboard AI. I forget what the fancy Apple name, you said it earlier.
Apple Foundation
Yeah.
Models Framework.
Okay. And so they have not made to developers, there's another level of this, which is the private server version of this, where Apple anonymizes it on their server. Developers don't get access to that. Users do through a shortcuts action. We've talked about it in the past on the show. So you're not getting that second level LLM. But my experiments with this stuff is for the types of things we're talking about. The built-in AI is just fine,
Oh, yeah.
and it's really kind of an interesting way to use AI to get your work done that is replacing donkey work, not thinking work. So, like, I'm 100% on board with what you guys are doing. And I think, a lot of people are afraid of AI. A lot of people are nervous about bringing it into their workflows. But to
Mhm.
me, this is the
Mhm.
exact kinds of things that it should be doing. It should allow us to focus on doing the tasks, planning the projects. It gets the grunt work out of the way, and in your everything you've mentioned, whether it's the steps to put the solar in or whatever, you are in control. At the end, you see the list, you delete steps that you don't want, you add steps, you say, oh, that's a good idea, but I want to look up the
Right.
contractor at the license board or whatever. You go through and customize it yourself.
Yeah. You can even select a step and say, expand this.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think it's really great that you guys are doing that. A lot of people are questioning, where does this AI thing fit? This is the kind of thing that I see it fitting for. It's
And
like,
it's important to note that everything stays on your machine.
yeah,
One of the principles behind Omni that appeals to me as a company, your data should remain your data under your control.
yeah,
You need to connect to a server someplace and be sharing and all of a sudden be getting advertisements about solar installations in your inbox, right?
yeah,
All stays, since it's using the local intelligence, it all stays on your computer. And the other thing if you see the amount of code it basically takes 2 lines of JavaScript to query this architecture and they get a response, right?
yeah,
It really makes it so everybody can play in this sandbox. We have a free tool called Prompt Tester. You install the plugin with a click, and then you can sit there and write a prompt and then see the result. And so you can start talking to this onboard Apple intelligence engine and see what it can do. Start asking it questions or create scenarios and see how it responds. And it's pretty amazing what it's able to do. And it can be very useful helper. That's how I look at it. And that's when we were talking about the whole Siri and App Intense. I found that in my entire explorations with all of that area,
yeah,
served the purpose best as a helper. It didn't replace things for me. I didn't use my voice to create everything, but while I was working, I could say something like, save this over to my server, and then it would do it in the background while I was working. Those kind of assistive things are really where the strength of artificial intelligence comes in. If you're doing it correctly, it's your assistant, not your director.
Yeah. An analogy I keep using is think of it as an intern. Like I just had this conversation with my wife because now they're getting some access to AI at her work.
Uh-huh.
And I said, you think an intern that is eager to help and confidently 100% wrong sometimes. And and if you think of it that way and realize that you are the supervisor and you're
Uh-huh.
the one ultimately responsible for what you use from that intern, then you're good,
That's
Uh,
brilliant, David. Can I use that
yeah, go
analogy?
for it. Go for it.
That's a great analogy. That's exactly what it is,
When
right?
it's wrong and it's like, yeah, boss, I got the answer. And sometimes it does
It's
not.
confident about
Yeah.
its answer. Even
Yeah.
though it's wrong, it's confident about it.
Always 100% confident. But the Ethan Mollick, who's a real good thinker on this stuff, he's actually a business school teacher, but he's a kind of a leading guy on AI usage, and he always talks about be the human in the room, and you need to do that with this Omni Group stuff too. Sal didn't
Mhm.
find the magic sauce to make it do this for you, but he did find a way to make OmniFocus take some of the donkey work off your plate, and that's what I like. I don't know if you're allowed to say or not. Are you guys going to go further with this? Is OmniFocus where you're going to stop?
Oh, no, the plan is to over time spread this to all of the Omni suite of productivity apps, Omni Outliner and Omni Plan and Omni Graph.
Yeah,
So just like Omni Automation is across all of their apps on all devices, the same will be applied to this. But also be aware that, this is intensive. It
yeah,
uses computing power. So if you're doing this on your phone might
get
might
hot.
burn through some battery if you're really
Yeah,
throwing this kind of stuff at it. So
yeah,
it's how you use it. Again, it's your approach, David. I like it. Is that it's an intern. You don't have the intern just doing stuff needlessly. You call that intern when you have a
yeah.
specific thing that you want to have done.
Yeah, you don't have the intern write the letter and just send it to the shareholders, right? You know,
Right.
kind of hardware related is, a big part of the announcement last week with the new phones is that they're aluminum. And people have been asking me, well, why did they do that? They made such a big deal of titanium. And at one point in the presentation, they said the new aluminum with the vapor chamber is 20 times more heat efficient.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, it is 100% because they're running these AI models on these phones, and the phones aren't
Mhm.
getting hot enough to cook an egg, and they had to cool it off. It has nothing to do with giving them better colors, or this is 100% making the phone cooler, in my opinion. I mean, maybe
Yes,
I'm wrong.
I'd wager on that one. Yep, I go with you.
This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by Indeed. Go to Indeed.com/MPU and join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide using Indeed to hire great talent fast. So you just realized your business needed to hire someone, like yesterday. How can you find an amazing candidate fast? Easy, just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites, and their sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster, and it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data worldwide, sponsored job posts directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non sponsored jobs. Hiring the right person is such an art. You have to get someone with the right capabilities, but also the right attitudes. Using Indeed lets you filter down to just the best candidates so fast so you can make that perfect hire. What I love about Indeed is the way they take all the work out of that process. With sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long term contracts, and you only pay for results. And how fast does it all happen? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of the show will get $75 sponsored job credit. That way you can get your job more visibility at indeed.com/MPU. Just go to indeed.com/MPU right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on the Mac Power Users. INDEED.com/MPU. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring Indeed is all you need. And our thanks to Indeed for their support of the Mac Power Users and all of Relay. Okay, Sal, so the rules have changed a little bit with the arrival of LLMs, but still we've got, AppleScript and JavaScript and the stuff you guys are developing.
Mm-hmm.
And, our audience is always interested in automation, but they're a lot of the people in the Mac Power Users audience are not developers. They're smart lawyers and business people and students who want to get the most out of automation, but they're also looking at that equation of I can't spend 40 hours to save myself 30 seconds. So if somebody is coming to automation now and saying, look, listening to Sal and David, I think I need to do better at this. Where would you tell people to start at this point? I mean, do we send people to AppleScript or JavaScript? And, how do you get started learning automation in 2025?
That's a great question. And motivated people look for answers, and they look for a logical, solid approach that seems doable, right?
Yeah.
And I really honestly say that Omni automation is a great sandbox to start with and to do advanced things with even as well. And on the omni-automation.com website, we have tutorial for OmniFocus for learning how to automate it step by step. You don't need to know anything. You can start at the beginning, and it teaches you how to access these properties, how to access elements, and eventually put it together into a simple plugin that you can run yourself. And it introduces you to the concept of API or application programming interfaces. What are the objects? What are their properties? Those kind of things. And it's a great place to start because it's based on core JavaScript in the operating system. You're not installing any third-party builds or anything. You're using Apple's defined tools. So you're not inputting anything weird on your computer. And JavaScript is so documented on the internet. We have a list of some of the sites you can go to for doing their tutorials as well. We have our own, and then we have hundreds of samples that you can just click and copy and use and paste into your own things. And then again, as we pointed out earlier, community is really important. Trying to do something on your own is harder than if you have a community where you have trust and you have shared commonality of activity, and you have a desire to learn and move things forward together. There's a great community around Omni products. And one of the best examples of that is since we've introduced this new ability into OmniFocus, we've been watching the Slack channel at Omni, and it's incredible the creativity that people came up with. Like the person that you said, can you suggest tags for these tasks, right? Yeah. And then somebody else came up with something. Well, I need to grab my email and wade through this whole thing and figure out what events I need to put in my inbox. Yeah. These kind of things are being shared openly and discussed. And that's the kind of community you want to be in. Omni has that. They draw those kind of people who are normal people who are motivated to do something a little bit higher and that can create their own tool that makes their life easier. So I'd start really with Omni Automation at omni-automation.com, do the OmniFocus tutorial and just see, does it appeal to you? Is this something? And if it doesn't, then we still have hundreds of free plugins you can download and install and try them out that way.
Yeah. I'm going to link in the show notes the Omni Slack channel and also the Mac Power Users forum, talk.macpowerusers.com.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of automators there as well. But I want to talk for a minute about Omni. It's omni-automation.com if you're
Hmm.
listening, because you got to get that dash in there. You go to a completely
Yep.
different site. But I have always been curious about this. Is that entirely you're doing? I mean, it seems like,
That's my babe. I love doing it. I try to monitor and stay up on what customers are asking about.
yeah.
And if there's a question that comes up in Slack, I'll put an example up there on the site so that the next time somebody has a question, they can just go click, copy, try it. Or a lot of our examples you can run right from the web page. You just click it and it will run right in your app for you after you've approved it.
Well, I want to compliment you on that. I mean, this is the reason why a guy like you doesn't answer voicemail, because like I don't think you're going to get Sal to write you an email to tell you how to fix something, but you ask a question, there's a good chance it'll show up there. But it's
Yep.
done in a way, and it's done in such a loving way. It reminds me kind of the old timey web, because you go to it and it's like, here's a problem. Let me tell you how you would solve it. Now, here's the code that you could just copy and run it yourself. And there's a component. If you push the button here, you can run the code on the page to see how it works, and I'll walk you through stuff. I mean, it is so informative. Like a guy like me, I am not a programmer. Bizarrely, I now have an app, but I'm not a programmer. But I've always been on the fringe of automation technologies and playing with those types of tools, and I know just enough to be dangerous. But I go to your site and it always feels like, okay, now I understand exactly what is happening here. And you do, and like there's hundreds of problems you have solved
Yep.
this way on this website. And almost every time I think of something I want to add to OmniFocus or Omni Outliner, I go there and you've already approached it. In fact, I have emailed you in the past saying, hey, can we do that? And you just send me a link and like, oh, it's already done. You've already figured it out. And so I really encourage people, even if you're not an Omni app user, go there and just kind of poke
Yeah.
around, because I think you can learn JavaScript
Yeah.
just poking around. It's just a very wonderfully done website.
And
Omni
there's no
dash,
cookies, no trackers, no nothing.
yeah,
It's just
exactly.
about getting the information you need.
Yeah, and it's just really great. Omni-automation.com. All right, Sal, I want to ask you some rapid fire questions. All right, you up
Do I
for it?
need do I need to sit a certain way for this,
Yeah,
or
okay. Like we need to have like a timer going or something. But
do I have
let's,
to be on a stool and the lights go down, the $1 million question.
yeah, it's like a automation Rorschach test. I'm
Okay.
just gonna say something and just tell me what comes to your mind. All right. Favorite automation you've built recently?
Well, my favorite automations are probably not too interesting to most people, but it usually involves BB Edit. Since most of the work I do for that website and for code writing and everything is all done in BB Edit, I have a really nice automation that I do with BB Edit that takes scripts and converts them into a specialized format so that it makes it clickable on the web page. And
Okay.
it really, wow, every time I run it, I go, thank you, thank you.
All right. Next, most underrated automation tool on the Mac.
Oh, wow. Well, the Finder can do a lot of things that people don't realize that it can do, like for renaming files. You can do a
Sure.
lot. They basically took one of the automator actions that we had and they put it into the Finder and for renaming. And the other day I had to do a bunch of renaming and I went, oh, yeah, Finder. And I went right into the Finder and just instantly renamed 300 files. So it's like, wow.
All right. Biggest automation mistake you see people make when they get started.
Uh, they try to do too much too fast.
Okay.
The best way to learn automation is just incremental, one little thing at a time. And I'll tell you a music story about that. Okay. So I was at Berkeley in Boston. That's where I went to school. I got my degree in music. And I was into Benny Goodman at the
Okay.
time. And if you ever heard Benny Goodman play clarinet in the 30s, I
Yeah.
mean, when they were playing swing that was at like 240, I mean, it's like, bam, those guys, and he was flying through these sections. And I asked my teacher, I said, well, how does he do that? How do you do this?
Yeah.
Right. And the guy goes, okay, I want you to transcribe this solo on riding high. song, Cole Porter song.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, okay. So then, I said it took a lot of lifting of the needle and putting it back down.
Yeah.
But
Because they didn't have apps then where
I,
you could
I
pause it and slow it
next,
down. Yeah.
yeah, for my next session with him, I came in with the transcription of Benny Goodman, and he goes, okay, he goes, look at these first four notes right there, and I go, yeah, and he goes, does it make a little shape? And I go, yeah. He goes, where else is that shape happening? He goes over here, and he goes, this is a motif, and he goes, then I look over here, and he goes, now circle these motifs, and he goes, well, what about this one? It's that one upside down, and I went, oh yeah, right, and so within 5 minutes, the whole solo was all these little circles.
Yeah.
And he goes, think of them as words. And he's just stringing these things together, brilliantly stringing them together, very creatively. But that's basically what he's doing. You take these small components and you connect them. And the next thing you know, you got this brilliant piece. Well, the same applies to automation. You don't start by trying to do the entire project. You start learning automation by doing small tasks.
Yeah.
You
Learn the
learn, well,
words.
how do I change the color of the box? Okay. Well, if I can change the color, can I do something else? Can I change its position? Oh, can I add a border? Okay. Can I do this? And you learn these little tools and then you start connecting those. And it makes it so much easier to make progress with learning your automation. You do it incrementally. And the biggest mistake I see people do is try to take on the entire thing, at once, because there could be aspects about it that you don't learn until you've already built your knowledge base up a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So that's the question.
Yeah. I mean, it's the answer in so many contexts, all of life, right? Break it
Well, it's
into
all related.
pieces. Yeah.
Everything's
Yeah.
related. You can't separate out one part of your life from the other. The principles that you learn always remain the same.
When I was in high school, old Benny Goodman, and what he had, the band at the time was called the Young Thundering Herd. He had all these college kids,
Right.
and they used to come play at Disneyland every summer, and I used to go
Right.
watch them, and I would go talk to him afterwards, and he was the nicest guy, and even though he was pretty old, he still shredded on that clarinet. I mean,
Oh yeah. Oh
yeah,
yeah. That doesn't go away. Once you know how to do that, it never leaves you.
yeah. Okay, that's another rabbit hole that Stephen probably wouldn't have let me go down. Yeah. Uh,
Glad it exists.
yeah. Okay. Rapid questions. What is one automation every Mac user should set up?
Oh, wow. Probably renaming files,
Okay. Yeah.
because
So
that's
easy.
everybody.
Yeah.
And you usually have some kind of convention you want to do, and you don't want to take the time to do it, but then you end up spending so much time trying to get spaces or dashes or cases right. Spend time to write the automation and get it done, for yourself.
Is there any tool you wish existed but doesn't?
Yeah, I wish there was Apple events on every
Yeah.
platform.
I knew when I asked the question what you were going to say, and
It's like,
from your
why
from your lips
why
to
that
Tim's
wasn't
ears.
considered essential and part of the operating system from the very beginning, so that you had no choice but to make your app scriptable.
Yeah. I think that the ship has sailed there.
Yep.
But I hope someday that we get something like that works between all Apple platforms,
Yep.
because it would make a big difference. I feel like they're finding religion a little bit on automation with what they've done in shortcuts.
Oh yeah. I mean, the fact that Craig goes on the video and is talking about automation and intelligence, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the nice thing too, is through the hard work of all those guys like Ari and the team from Workflows and everybody, all the different people at Apple, it's embedded there now in the operating system. Automation and shortcuts and everything is so much part of the Apple experience that it's never going to go away. And once they finally achieve that next level, it's going to be obvious of why that should be there, and everybody's going to want to be part of that.
I have a question for you. What's your favorite app in your menu bar?
In my menu bar, what do you mean by menu bar?
Up at the top of your Mac, you got the list of all the apps, the utilities that you're running.
Oh, the little
Yeah,
utilities.
yeah.
It generates placeholder text. It's called Lorema,
Ah, like
Lorema, because when I do websites, I often, have placeholder in there while I'm designing it, when I'm working on Omni automation, and I need to insert quickly 10 words and a nice little utility that I use that stays up in the menu bar.
yeah, there's always something, We've
Yeah.
all got these weird needs, and on the Mac, there's probably an app out there that'll solve it for you. So, as we sit here in 2025, what's the general state of automation? Are we doing okay?
Yes, the general state of automation is making great progress and about to really take off.
Yeah, I like you. I can't wait to see the brain transplanted Siri and automation and how all that works together. I think that a lot of developers are suddenly going to find a reason to write intents into their
Uh-huh.
apps, and shortcuts
Mhm.
is going to get way better, and Siri is going to
Yep.
get better. It's just going to be good
Might need a
times.
different chip. I mean, maybe the M5, maybe the M6 to handle all those calculations, right?
Yeah.
But get there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it definitely something I felt like I saw with last week's announcements is that the hardware is getting ahead for AI, like more
Yeah.
RAM, more processing, more
Yep.
heat sink. All that is
Yep.
stuff that I think really leans into AI.
And that takes time and planning, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Sal, if people want to learn more, I know one place I would tell them to go is Omni Automation with a dash.
Uh-huh.
Is there anywhere else people should go to keep up with the stuff you're doing?
Pretty much that's where I'm putting my focus right now, and there's links within that site in different sections for feedback.
Yeah.
Use those links. And if you have ideas or questions or things, use those links and let me know what you're up to and what you're interested in doing too, as well.
Well, buddy, you just invited the Mac Power Users fire hose into your life, and I bet you will get some interesting ideas. So hope that
You
works.
always learn, and maybe it'll inspire me to put up new examples, right?
Exactly, exactly. We are the Mac Power Users podcast. Steven isn't here this week because of the Relay St. Jude, but he'll be back next week. If you'd like to learn more, you can go to relay.fm/MPU. That's where you can sign up for more power users, which gets you the ad-free extended version of the show. Sal's going to stick around a bit today. We're going to talk about music. Sal is also a first order jazz musician, and I can't resist that. Thank you to our sponsors, Squarespace and Indeed, and we'll see you next time.